I want to welcome you all to the Salt Lake Chamber. We're pleased today to be releasing our 2014 Economic Outlook in partnership with CBRE. I'm Natalie Gochour, Chief Economist here at the Chamber, and my companion here, Darin Mellott. Darin, do you mind introducing yourself and CBRE?
Absolutely. I'm Darin Mellott, a Senior Research Analyst with CBRE, the world's largest commercial real estate services firm, and work here in the Salt Lake City office for the firm. We're most pleased to be here with the Chamber and rolling out this outlook. There's a lot going on, and we're happy to share our insights with the community.
We're going to start by talking about what we're seeing globally, then go down to nationally, and then talk about Utah and Salt Lake County, and this is all included in the 2013 Economic Outlook. I'll just open this up by saying that the watchwords for this report are three words: uncertainty, volatility, and change. There's also a lot to be said about how what we're seeing in 2014 is much of the same that we saw in 2013. Growth will be below potential. Monetary policy is the focus. Fiscal policy is lagging behind and the greatest risk to the economy. There's no established playbook for what we're going to see in 2014, but we are forecasting a strong economy in Utah with great uncertainty nationally and globally. Darin, I'll ask you to expound on this.
Yeah, as Natalie mentioned, there are a lot of risks to the outlook. Starting on the global level, there are still a lot of structural issues and things being sorted out after the global economic recession of a few years ago. Policymakers haven't fully addressed those issues quite yet. Nationally, I think we can say the same thing. And although challenges to the outlook remain, I think it's safe to say that we've had some encouraging news over the last few days, not only with the Murray-Ryan budget deal, but also the market's reaction to the Fed's tapering. Those are all things that are encouraging signs to us that 2014 is shaping up to be a good year in a lot of respects.
Yeah, love that the Murray-Ryan agreement was a victory for pragmatism in this country. We have a senator from Washington State and a representative from Wisconsin who get together, and they didn't do the hard things, but they spelled out a compromise that averts a government shutdown and makes what were, I'll say, dumb sequestration cuts and makes smarter cuts, and actually raise some fees to help close the gap for some of these revenue problems. This is all very good for Utah.
Absolutely, and as Natalie mentioned, it doesn't address a lot of the big issues, a lot of the long-term drivers of the deficits in the future. However, if this deal is successful in changing the tone in Washington and providing a basis for more practical governance, that'll have a very positive effect on the national economy and, by extension, the Utah and Salt Lake economies as well, which we expect to grow at a fairly respectable pace next year.
Yeah. I was disappointed that it did not deal with the debt ceiling problem, and that's something that we all have to not look forward to in 2014, that there'll be another moment where the disagreements in Washington will reach a crescendo and potentially cause a lot more volatility and uncertainty in the economy.
Yeah, there's absolutely still potential for disruptive governance, which is not a good thing. So, you know, how the first quarter shapes up, how the first half of 2014 shapes up, will certainly have a lot to do with how policymakers handle this issue on a national level, and something to be watching over the next several months as we approach the deadline there.
Right. So uncertainty because of Washington, D.C. is the greatest risk for the Utah economy, but our forecast for Utah is very strong. We're forecasting a 3.1% job growth, and that unemployment could get to 4.2% by the end of the year, which a lot of economists would call full employment for our state. We have every private sector industry in the state growing, most notably the information sector, a lot of our technology jobs, our tourism sector, and our financial services sector.
It's absolutely remarkable when you look at the Utah economy, especially in relative terms. We're very well positioned here. I would say, going back to this issue of the debt ceiling, over the last several months, we really learned that we're not completely insulated from external pressures and shocks and problems, as growth did temporarily slow. We anticipate it was a temporary slowing through the fall of last year. And so that provides some, a reason to be cautious, I guess, in some respects, and pay attention to what's going on the national level. But we are expecting that growth to pick up again next year. And Utah has a very diverse economy, and a lot of great things are going on, and some new projects that should be yielding dividends.
Love highlighting those
for a long time.
We have the rebuild, the complete rebuilding of the Salt Lake International Airport. It'll commence in 2014. We have the new F-35 opportunity for Hill Air Force Base and what that will mean. And then it looks like an expansion of the Huntsman Cancer Hospital. Real positive things for the economy, very helpful.
Yeah, and from our perspective, working with clients who might be new to the area or don't have a large presence in Salt Lake or the state, these kinds of projects are a big deal, because it raises our community's profile in a meaningful way. To have facilities like Huntsman Cancer, to have a brand new airport with one of the world's largest airlines having a hub there. These are all big things that help raise the profile of the community. And a lot of people are still discovering what Utah has to offer, and so those are very, very positive things.
Absolutely. Darin, before we take questions, would you give a quick summary on what you're seeing in the real estate markets in the state?
Absolutely. So, at our firm, we fondly refer to commercial real estate as the economy in a box. And there's a simple reason for it. It's just the literal structure of the economy, I guess, is how you could look at it. People hire workers. They're going to need some offices to put them in. People are buying things. Those things have to be produced. It creates demand for industrial real estate and retail real estate. And so we see a lot of these economic trends play out in the commercial real estate markets. And I'm pleased to say that during the coming year, we're expecting improvement in all of the major property types across the board. And so, commercial real estate is reflecting these positive trends that are expected to continue in 2014.
So to summarize, we have an economy that has recovered nationally and in this state. We believe that there are risks out there, primarily the lack of federal leadership on the economy in Washington, D.C. But in the private sector, we're ready to expand, to grow. And when you come to Utah, we're seeing very strong 3.1% job growth, very low unemployment. I think 2014 will be a strong year in a world of uncertainty.
Yeah, still plenty of questions, but to be answered, especially from a policy perspective. However, 2014 is shaping up to be a good year, and we've had some good developments happen over the last couple of weeks, and we're anticipating a good year.
That's great. Let's open it up for questions. Anyone in the media?
I have a couple of questions. I'm Nick from KTNBC. Darin, to go back to your economy in a box, sounds like the commercial real estate market is indicative of what else is happening in the real estate world. Does one follow the other, or does one lead the other? Does commercial read residential, or is it vice versa, or are they not tied to each other?
Well, I mean, they're all connected in certain ways, I guess you could say, because obviously housing has a big impact on the broader economy. But commercial real estate just you can really track the broader trends in commercial real estate. So we look a lot at employment data, we look a lot at retail data, how are sales holding up. And that'll tell us how distribution and some of the industrial retail or real estate will be performing, and so commercial real estate just reflects those broader trends. So to the extent that housing improves, that'll be reflected in commercial real estate, because it's going to be fueling further growth in the broader economy.
Hey, Natalie, you mentioned 3.1% job growth. Could you just walk us through the steps of how you come to that number?
Yeah, well, a lot of things go into that. We look at the past and try to understand what the trends are. Our state has had this interesting thing where we bottomed out during the Great Recession, and then we popped out of the recovery. We were the 32nd. We had the 32nd worst economy during the downturn. That meant that 31 states had milder recessions than we did. So it hurt us really badly. But as we came out, when we went from trough to peak, we popped to be the third strongest economy. And so we've had this growth that has just been moving and propelling our state. City Creek Center helped with that. I-15 in Utah County helped with that. The construction of the National Security Agency facility helped with that. And so we were sitting here starting 2013 at 3.2% job growth. Then in the summertime, everything started to slow down. We went through about, 8 months of below average job growth. And so it really challenged us in this forecast, because we had to decide, was that something that's here to stay, or was that sort of a blip? And we have concluded that it was a bit of a blip, that there's enough fundamentals that are feeding growth in this state that we're actually very positive about the job growth. And so we look at the energy sector and see what the growth is. We look at the information sector, the construction sector, and we break them down piece by piece, excuse me, add them all up and come up with a 3.1% forecast. That's about the same as last year.
Yeah. It's healthy job growth. It's certainly below potential. We're concerned about labor participation rates. They plummeted throughout the recession and have not recovered yet. And so although we've recovered all the jobs that were lost, there are still people on the sidelines, and so that's certainly of concern. It's respectable growth, but it is slightly below the historical averages, and so there's always work to do. But again, can't emphasize it enough. We're looking forward to a pretty good year in 2014.
So it sounds like you're saying Utah has a lot of positivity to look forward to, but on the national level, to use your buzzwords, Natalie, uncertainty and volatility. How is Utah able to separate itself from what's happening nationally?
Well, if I could just start off there. I think the majority of the risks are really on the national level. But even nationally, there are a lot of really great stories in the economy. So exciting developments in the tech sector. Energy is just a tremendous story. Transforming entire regions of the country. Housing and autos, sectors that have traditionally fueled growth, all expected to do well next year. And so it's really not that we're expecting things to be terrible on a national level, but we are saying the risks that remain really come from that national and global level.
I think it's also fair to say, completely agree with what Darin said, but we have to understand that Utah is very dependent on the nation. We have a large federal workforce here because of our public lands, and we're a regional center. We have an IRS facility in our state. We also have a big defense industry here, and sequestration has hurt that. And then we have just the natural connectivity to our nation's capital that has meant that as they have made poor economic decisions, they've filtered down to Utah and softened or dampened our growth. But the reason I'm optimistic about Utah is our fundamentals are so strong right now. And if I just highlighted a few of them, we're a very fiscally fit state. I don't think there's a state in the country that manages their state budget in a more fiscally responsible way than the state of Utah. We're a very young state and growing state. And young means that we're healthy and that we're affordable and that we're tech savvy. Those are real attractive things in this economy for companies as they expand. And then something that's already been mentioned, we have this incredible economic diversity. We rank 4th among states in our economic diversity. That's to say that we have all these industries that contribute to the whole, compared to our neighbor to the west, Nevada, which is so dependent on mining and gaming. They become the most specialized economy in the country, and here in Utah, 4th most diverse. Very interesting for an interior western state. So I look at the fundamentals and I think, we're held down by what Washington fiscal policy is doing to our state, but the fundamentals are strong enough to make us a very above average, in fact, top tier economic performing state.
Yeah, one final question. Sounds like the job growth is great, 3.1%, and the unemployment dropping is great, but aside from that, on a 30,000 foot level, what does this report mean to the average Utahn?
That's a good question. I think generally speaking, people understand there are a lot of questions out there. We've been through a lot collectively, and so I think our theme, shifting landscapes and familiar challenges, when we first sat down and we were looking at the risks of the outlook, potential positive developments, you know, there were a lot of familiar themes carrying over from past years.
Yeah.
But you know, the good thing is that we are expecting continued improvement in 2014. I think that's the takeaway. Things are going to continue to get better. There will still be issues, particularly on longer term issues and concerns for businesses and families alike. However, that improvement is expected.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing to mention to the average Utahn is if you've been holding back,
Yeah.
if you've got a big decision that you've been holding back on because of the economy, our view is that 2014 is a year for things to start really moving in this economy. So if you're in a small business and you're thinking about investing, it's a good year to do it.
Absolutely.
And if you're looking at your family households and there's something you need to replace or do, we think this economy will sustain you. We won't be having a lot of troubles, a lot of layoffs, anything like that. This is a growth economy. This is a time to look forward, invest, believe in the market because good things are happening. I think we had one more question.
Yeah, your theme, one of the items in your theme is the shifting landscapes, and you also mentioned as change is one of the defining things about this report. Could you highlight for us some of the major changes that we should be aware of as we look forward to 2014?
There's a change that I'm really hoping for, and that is that there is such a bias, and we talk about this in the report, there's such a bias towards the short term. Yeah. Even if you look at the Murray-Ryan agreement, you know, it's a couple-of-year agreement. We're not valuing the future enough. And so one of the changes I hope to see is that we see the Murray-Ryan thing, we think, okay, short-term pragmatism, this was a good step. Now let's start looking a little bit further down the road and let's go after the real structural problems that we've got to deal with. These deal with entitlement reform, you know, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and they deal with a federal government that has a spending problem and needs to just start tapering it down over the long term. So that's the biggest change that I'm looking for.
You know, and you know, changes that we know are actually just underway with the Fed's announcement yesterday. We certainly, you know, want to continue monitoring market reactions to changes in Fed policy, but we, you know, expect that Fed policy will maintain a very accommodative bias during the coming year. The debt ceiling; those are all things that, you know, we want to watch for. But as Natalie mentioned, we're really looking for some more long-term focus that will help provide certainty going forward.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We'd be happy to take some individual questions.